series, we invited Mr. Harold LaFall here. And I'm going to read from my phone, and I apologize because I didn't wear my glasses and I'm middle aged. Hi, Facebook. I'm middle aged. Harold LaFall is an empowerment strategist, author, speaker, and entrepreneur. He is the founder of the You Are Enough Empowerment Movement and the author of I Am Enough, 90 Days of Spiritual Nuggets to Recognize and Embrace Your Authentic Self. Harold has appeared on ABC News and has been featured in Black Enterprise, Best Self Atlanta, and that's a hard word, Entrepreneur magazine. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Harold LaFall.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Like I came way from California. I'm gonna need a little more energy than that. Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, I am so excited to be here with you tonight because what I came to do is really to disrupt some self-limiting thoughts that you may have about yourself in your future. Are you with me?
Yes.
You with me? Okay. And so, like I said, I came all the way from Oakland, California. I grew up in Oakland, and I grew up in what was called the hood. Anybody know what the hood is? So that's where I grew up, and I grew up in public housing. And I grew up in a space and place where the expectations for my life were very limited. And part of that limitation was based upon who my parents were. See, I grew up on welfare, and my dad was a pharmaceutical salesperson, not the legal kind. And so people thought, because of who my mom and dad were, that my life should turn out differently than what I envisioned. But as a kid, I always had big dreams beyond my surroundings. How many of you like that? Have big dreams beyond where you started? Like that? Yeah. And so that's how I was. I was always a dreamer. In fact, every apartment we had, I would make the closet into my office. I was like 6 or 7, and I would pretend like I was a businessman. I would take paper and write pretend checks. And so I always saw myself as a businessman. And nobody else kind of knew what was going on, but that was the dream and vision I had for myself. And nobody supported that dream because I kind of kept it to myself. And so I carried this dream for many, many years. And for me, what changed the trajectory of my life was I got involved in this program called the Upward Bound program. Anybody ever heard of the Upward Bound program? I joined that program when I was in the 9th grade, and it was a program for first-generation college students and individuals that were low income, and I fell into both of those categories. And the program really changed the way I looked at myself because it exposed me to individuals that looked like I looked and came from the hood like I did, and so it made me think that there was different and new possibilities for me. And so for most of us, it's so important that we have a model or a vision of what it is that we want to accomplish and to become. Because what I know for sure is that if you can believe it, you can catch it. But you have to believe it first. And so by seeing people who came from my community, it made me think that there were other possibilities beyond being a pharmaceutical salesperson, the illegal kind. And so I remember I only signed up for Upward Bound only because when I was going to Upward Bound, they gave you $5 for going every Saturday. So that was my motivation, just to get the $5. But what I didn't expect is to be exposed to people who helped me get a greater vision for my life possibilities. And so I started thinking that, okay, maybe I can go to college. And so I ended up getting into college. I went to the school called Cal State University Hayward. It's now called Cal State East Bay. And I got into college not because I was really, really smart, because on my best day, I got about a C. And in fact, my GPA was really, really low, that when I graduated, you need at least a 2.0 to graduate out of high school. Mine was maybe like a 2.01. And my SAT scores weren't the best. But I had this counselor at Upward Bound who really believed in me. And sometimes it takes people believing in you when you can't believe in yourself. So he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. So he thought I was college material. So he talked to one of the admissions individuals at Cal State, Hayward, and talked them into letting me into the university, even though I didn't have the grades, even though my SATs were very, very low. So I got into college, and once you get into college, and all of you know this, there are books that they expect as freshmen you to have read. Books such as Macbeth, Shakespeare. Now, at my school, I had heard about these books, but I had never read them. And then Moby Dick was another one. And I didn't know what Moby Dick was. I thought it was something maybe obscene. And so I was like, what is Moby Dick? But I hadn't read any of those books. And so I was really, really not prepared for college. And so for me, what happened was I ended up having to take all these remedial classes because I didn't know how to write well. In fact, I knew nothing about punctuations. But what I did know that if a sentence was too long, a comma should go somewhere. So I would put a quantum randomly just to shorten the sentence because I knew there should be a comma somewhere. And so I struggled all through college because I felt like I really didn't belong. There's this thing called the imposter syndrome. Anybody ever heard that? Imposter syndrome, it's that feeling that you're in a space or place where you don't belong. You feel like a fraud. Well, I felt like a fraud all through undergrad. I just didn't feel like I was smart enough. I didn't feel like I could do it. None of my friends went to college. But then I started working on myself. And when I say working on myself, I started working on how I saw myself. Because I saw myself as not enough. I saw myself as inferior. And the only thing that was stopping me from progressing and doing really well was really me. And for many of us, no one is stopping us from being successful and living our dreams but us. It's the conversation that we are having in our heads when we look in the mirror or when we're just sitting alone. You know those thoughts that I'm really not as good as they think I am, you know. These dreams really, that's kind of far-fetched. You know, who do I think I am? I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't know the right people. So we have these conversations in our head. We want more, but we talk ourselves out of it because of those negative thoughts that are going on. And one of the things that I know is that we're born for success, but we're often programmed for failure. And what I mean by being programmed for failure is that we start to buy into some of the things that were told to us when we were kids. So maybe you made a mistake and your cousin, your mom said you were stupid. That started this programming of, oh, I'm not really that smart, I'm stupid. And so we kind of continue those conversations as we grow older. Anybody ever had those experiences where someone said something to you not so nice and it kind of carried itself with you? Anybody? And so what happens for most of us, we have to unlearn a lot of the programming that we were exposed to. And here's the thing. The people who told us some of those things, it's not that they were trying to really hurt us in most cases. In a lot of cases, is that they had gotten that same message and they were just sharing with you what they received. And so for me, I never was, I told you I wasn't a great student. Not only was I not a great student, I couldn't even play basketball. Now I'm a black man. I can't play basketball. Now that's a problem. That is a problem in the hood if I can't play basketball. And so if you are not a great student and you're not getting that affirmation like, oh, good, or if you're not a good athlete and you're not getting that rah-rah and no one's encouraging you, how do you move towards success if no one's saying, you know, you can do that, you can do that. And so for me, I had to learn how to encourage myself. And so for many of us, that's what we have to do. If you don't have a supportive family or if you don't have supportive friends, you have to learn how to encourage yourself. And how do you do that? How do you encourage yourself? For me, one of the things that I do is I always would, when I didn't feel like I was enough, I would talk to myself in the mirror. Does that sound strange, to talk to yourself in the mirror? Does it sound strange? A little bit. Just a little. but it helped me to begin to reprogram my mind and how I felt about myself. And in fact, one of the things that I did was I would write on the mirror in the bathroom, because every day you go to the mirror, right? Brush your teeth. So I would write on the mirror, I am enough. Anybody ever do anything like that? Do affirmations, Erica? Nobody else? Okay, so look, I'm going to give you guys an assignment. This is going to be your assignment. So one of the things that I want you to start doing is, if you have a mirror, I want you to start saying or writing positive things on your mirror, things that you want to happen, things that you want to achieve. Because again, if you can believe it, you can achieve it. And so for me, I managed to go through college. I graduated, didn't do well, but I graduated. I got a degree. And it's so funny. My mother didn't know much about college, but she knew after 4 years I should graduate. But I was there at around 6 years. And she was like, what is going on? What is happening? And I told my mother, I'm taking the long journey. I'm going to get there, but I'm taking the long journey. So I ended up getting a degree after 6 years. And I thought once you got a degree, that all the doors were going to open, all the doors of success, all these opportunities were going to happen. And guess what happened? Say it again.
They didn't.
They did not happen. So I got this degree, and I thought I was going to get all these opportunities, and it didn't happen. It took me a whole year to find my first job out of college. Part of it was I didn't know how to prepare for success. So I didn't do any kind of internships or volunteer anywhere to kind of beef up my resume. I didn't know to do any of those things. And so I was starting from a blank script. And so I ended up getting my first job right out of college was at the public housing authority that I grew up in the hood. I got a job, and I thought that job was going to make me feel successful. So I got my first job working at the housing authority. And one of the things that I did is what most people do when they don't feel good about themselves. You start buying things. Anybody understand that? You start buying things. So what did I do when I got my first job? Now, my first job, I was barely making $30,000 a year. So my first job, what did I go buy? Anybody want to take a wild guess? A car. Now, not just any kind of car. Guess what kind of car I bought? And I bet you can answer that question. What kind of car did I buy? What kind of car did I buy?
Beamer.
Almost. What kind of car? What was it? Mercedes-Benz. I bought a Mercedes-Benz right out of college, and I was only making $30,000 a year, and the car cost more than I made per year. Why did I do that? Oftentimes, when you don't feel good about yourself, you will buy things to try to make yourself feel good. And so I got on that train of buying and accumulating things, trying to make myself feel good about myself. Oh, you're a t-shirt for that, for getting that answer right. And so I bought my first Mercedes, and then, look, I was still living in the hood. You can't live in the hood with a Mercedes. So then I bought a house that I really couldn't afford. But back in those days, this was a long time ago, you could get a house with what was called a no-doc loan. You guys are much too young to know about that. Those were loans that you could get where you didn't have to show proof of income. So you could make up any kind of number. You could say you made $150,000 when you actually made 20, because they didn't require any documentation. So I ended up getting this house that I really couldn't afford. And to be honest with you, I wasn't quite honest on my application. So I told them that I made a little more than I actually did. So I ended up getting this house that I really couldn't afford. And many people do that, you know. Many people buy homes that they really can't afford because why? They're trying to impress y'all. They want y'all to be impressed. We want you to be impressed with what we have. And so now I got a Mercedes and I got a nice big house with upstairs, downstairs. Because I had to have a house with 2 stories because I grew up watching the Cosbys. And to me, that meant success. And so I got this house upstairs, downstairs, and I look like success, but I feel like a failure and a fraud because I got all these things based upon lies and trying to impress other people. See, so often we get so caught up trying to impress other people. We want other people to like us. We want other people to affirm us. We want other people to endorse and say, yeah. And then we do things to try to get that support. And the support that we really need is the support from ourselves. So we're asking people to give us something that only we can give to ourselves. Anybody ever felt that way? You try to change things about yourself to get somebody to like you. You know, you think if you gain weight, you lose weight, cut your hair, they'll like me. If I take this class, then maybe they'll like you. Baby, it's not going to happen. Because why? Because that's our job to love ourselves. It's not other folks to love us. You know, it's our job to love ourselves first, and their love is just the icing on the cake. We try to make it the cake. And so for me, I got all these material things. I don't feel good about myself. And I'm stressed. Because now I got a house and a car I can't afford. And so what happens when you are stressed, guess what? Those dreams you had, those dreams I had of one day starting my own business, they were far off because I was trying to pay my mortgage and my car note. And so often what we do is we complicate our lives with stuff. And so you forget about your dreams and your visions, and we get caught up in this routine of life, of just on this treadmill of life, just doing what everybody else is doing. But how many of you want more than just average? Anybody want more than just average? So if you want more than just average, you have to think differently. You have to be different. So if you want to keep on getting what you're getting, just keep on doing what you're doing. But if you want something bigger and better, you got to shift and do things different. You got to make yourself be willing to be uncomfortable. And so for me, I got a house, I got this car, and I still feel unfulfilled. But one of the things that kept coming back to me was that I had the dream of always wanting to one day own my own business. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I had the dream. And for me, I ended up getting a supervisor at my job that just didn't like me. Anybody ever have a supervisor like that just didn't like me? Well, she turned out to be a blessing in disguise for me because the fact that she didn't like me, she made life so miserable for me. She was the push that I needed to really step out and start my own business. And so I thought that, okay, I want to start a business. I want to start an employment agency. And I knew that I needed $35,000 to start this business. I didn't have $35,000. I didn't have $35. I didn't have nothing. All I had was a dream of doing this. And so, like, how am I going to get this money to start this business? And so I thought about asking one of my cousins who was also in pharmaceutical sales. I said, maybe I can get a loan from him and help him go legit and start this business. I said, no, I better not do this because you ever saw that movie, The Godfather? Yeah, my cousins are like that. They don't care that you're related. You know, they will hurt you if you owe them money. And I said, maybe I shouldn't do that. And so I ended up applying for a loan to start my business. And I applied for $35,000, and I ended up getting $25,000 to start my business. And so I took the $25,000, and I thought my business was going to blow up immediately. I'm like, oh, this is just getting ready to happen. Because when you have a dream, you just think everything is just going to fall into place. Well, I took the $25,000. I got me an office space. I got me some business cards that said I was the president and CEO of LaFall Employment Agency. And I was like, yeah, things are getting ready to happen. I'm about to be rich. I'm about to blow up. Yeah. Things blew up all right. After 6 months of being in business, my little Mercedes, I came outside one day and my car was gone. I'm like, where's my car? What happened to my car? So I called the police to report my car stolen, and they said, no, sir, your car has not been stolen. Your car has been repossessed. Repossessed? And then my house went into foreclosure, and then I had to file bankruptcy. So now I no longer had all of the trappings of success. Everybody now knew I was a fraud because the car was gone, the house, and I became so desperate that I was selling my clothes. We had this place called the Buffalo Exchange. You probably don't have one here, but it's a place where you could sell your clothes for money. So I was selling my clothes for money, and I'm wondering, what happened? What happened? And I was so embarrassed that I wanted to give up. And if I'm to be really honest, I became suicidal because I was embarrassed by the failure. I was embarrassed that now, look, people are going to realize that I'm not all that. And all of those negative thoughts that I had, they all came back up. And so I realized that either I was going to stay down or I was going to get back up. And there's this guy named Les Brown, and he says that if you fall down, fall backwards, because if you can look up, you can get up. And so I started remembering that, okay, this is not the end. See, one of the things that I've learned about life is that failure isn't final. We learn our best lessons in those moments that look like failure, but they're really learning opportunities. You know, Will Smith always says, fail fast, fail frequently, but fail forward. Fail forward, because there's great learning in those failures. That's where you learn the most value. You get the most value out of those failure experiences. And one of the things that I know is that everybody's life is like a heart monitor. You see a heart monitor, it's up and down, up and down, up and down. And so we all will go through those dips in life where things just don't work out. And it's in those dips where you have to remind yourself that I am enough, that in spite of what I'm going through, I'm enough to get through this. I'm enough to survive this setback. I'm enough to survive this devastation. I can get back up. And so for me, I had to start talking to myself all the time, like, okay, I can get back up. I can do this. I can make this work. I can survive this. And when you talk to yourself that way, before long, you'll start to believe it. At first, you're not going to believe it. But you got to be like that little engine. You know the little red engine? When you say, I think I can, I think I can, and you start out with I think I can, and you say it enough to where you start believing that you can. And once you start believing that you can, you have a different type of confidence. You have a different type of expectations, because what happens when your expectation changes, your situation change. For me, why I ended up in bankruptcy and why I ended up losing everything is because in the back of my mind, I kept expecting for that to happen. And how many of you know whatever you fear, you will attract? If you fear something long enough, you will attract the very thing you don't want to happen. But what happens when you start to expect for things to go better? What happens when you go into an interview and you expect to get the job? You have a different level of confidence. You have a different level of assurance. And even if you don't get that job, you have the confidence of knowing, okay, well, that just wasn't the right one for me. The next one. And so you don't take it personal like, oh, something is wrong with me because I didn't get that job. You just realize that there's another opportunity out there for you. And so you keep building yourself up. And here's the thing that I've learned not to do. When you're going through trials and tribulations, don't call your negative girlfriend that always co-signs with you, that tells you, yeah, girl, just go ahead and give up. I know I can't get a job either. I know my relationship. You don't have any friends like that? Y'all have good friends. Y'all don't have friends like that? You do? Okay, thank you for being honest. So most of us have those kinds of people in our life. We know who we can call to get a boost. And we know who we can call, who basically co-sign whatever we are saying. You know, because sometimes we have pity parties, and we want to call those friends that want to join our party. And that's not a good thing. Because when you're calling your friends that like to be a part of your pity party, it will keep you stuck. And for most of us, we don't want to be stuck, but sometimes being stuck feels comfortable, because if most of the folks you're hanging around with is stuck, you kind of just want to feel like a part of the club, a part of the group. And so for me, my friends started changing when I started thinking differently, because I wasn't having that conversation about, oh, woe is me, all things can't get better, things won't get better. I was talking about the things that I wanted to happen. I was starting to talk about the things I was expecting. So here I am, bankrupt, car gone, house gone, but now I'm thinking I'm going to get $1 million contract. That's what I kept saying to myself. I'm going to get $1 million contract. Now, I didn't tell anybody, because they would have thought I was crazy. Because I was, at this point, I wasn't driving a Mercedes. I was driving a Chevy Monza. You guys don't know this car. They don't make them anymore. But it was a Chevy Monza with primer on the side that needed a paint job. And so I'm driving that car, but I'm believing and thinking I'm going to get a big contract. And what did that do for me? Just believing it. Just believing I was going to get $1 million contract. What it did for me, it made me feel better. It made me feel hopeful. And so I was able to be more effective, and I was able to come up with possible solutions to my financial situation. See, if you're depressed and down, you can't see your way clear. You can't see solutions. You are not thinking about, how am I going to solve this problem? But when you get into a space of being hopeful, that's when you start seeing opportunities that you couldn't otherwise see. And so I started thinking I was going to get $1 million contract. And so one of the things that I realized was hindering me from that $1 million contract was this fear that I had created in my own head that said that I was afraid to speak in public. I had always had this fear of speaking in public. Anybody have that fear? No. In fact, the fear was so deep, that was the last class I took in college, was speech, because I was so afraid of speaking in front of people. I was like, oh my God, what are they going to think? And when I think about it now, I'm like, how just crazy that was, you know, because people are just people. And what I know is everybody's your equal. So we start putting people on layers and thinking, because this person's the CEO and this person's the mail clerk, that this person is somehow more valuable than that person. But when you realize that everyone is your equal, you stop being afraid of speaking in front of people. You stop being afraid of people. But one of the things that I did to overcome my fear, I joined this organization called Toastmasters. Anybody ever heard of Toastmasters? Toastmasters? I joined Toastmasters because I didn't like feeling afraid. And one of the things that I know is that in order for you to get to your dreams and to get to your next level, you're going to have to confront some of the fears that you have. And so for me, public speaking was one of them, because I would get so afraid of speaking in people that I would tense up. And you know, when you get tense, what happens is blood stops flowing to your brain. And if blood isn't flowing to your brain, you're not getting oxygen. And if you're not getting oxygen in your brain, you won't be able to remember your name. Somebody asks you your name, and you're like, what is my name? You ever had that experience where you've taken a test and you were all tense, and you forgot all the answers, but as soon as the test was over, you're like, oh, I knew the answer to that. It's because why? You've relaxed and you've let the oxygen flow. And so I had to start to learn how to just to relax and to know that everything was going to work out okay, because sometimes when we go through difficult things, we just start to think that nothing is going to work out, and we just get tense, and we walk around just like this, just tense, and we're waiting for the next problem to happen. We're waiting for the next tragedy. We're waiting for the next thing negative to happen. And when you're going through life like that, guess what? The next negative thing is going to start to happen. The next negative thing will happen to you. But we have to begin to shift our mindset and start expecting differently. Expecting differently. And so, guess what? After about 8 months, I got a call from this company offering me not a $1 million contract, but a $3 million contract after 8 months. And this guy had heard about my company and said that he wanted to partner with my company on this government contract. And he thought my company was this big company because people had been talking about it. He didn't know it was a company of one, and that was me. And the only reason he thought I had a secretary is I had an answering service answering my calls to make it seem like I had a secretary. But I was the secretary. I was the secretary. I was the mail clerk. I did everything in the office. And so I ended up getting that contract, and everything changed for me. But I got that contract not because I was lucky, not even because I was smart. I got that contract because I believed I would get it, and I started acting in a way that suggested, okay, this is the next thing to happen to me. And so I wasn't even surprised when I got the call. Well, I was a little surprised. When he called, I was like, he said, well, you know, we would like to see if you'd be interested in this contract. It could be $1 million for your business for 3 years, so it could be a total of $3 million. And I was like, uh-huh. And he said, well, can we meet today? And I was like, well, I can't meet today, but I can meet with you tomorrow. And part of the reason I had to stall is because I was way too excited. I was like a kid on Christmas. I was like, I need to just kind of get myself together. And at that point, I only had one suit left because I had sold everything else. And so I had to make sure that that one suit was clean so I could go into the meeting. And so I'll never forget, I went into the meeting with him the next day, and I had on my suit, and I had my little attache that I got from Ross. You guys have a Ross out here? You have Ross? Marshalls? It's like Marshalls, Ross. So I walked into the meeting and feeling fully confident like this had happened to me before. And you know what? It had happened to me before because it had happened in my imagination. Because, see, that's the seat of all of your breakthroughs, all of your dreams. It's in your imagination. So if you can believe it real in your mind, it's only a matter of time before you will actually have it in your hand. And so I ended up getting that contract. And guess what? Everything for me changed. But you won't know what changed for me most of all was that now that I could afford a Mercedes, I didn't get a Mercedes. Because I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I got a regular little Chevrolet. I didn't go out and get a big 2-story house. Because guess what? I didn't even like having to have a 2-story house. I didn't like having I didn't like going up and down the stairs. I'm like, who wants this? And so sometimes we think in our minds we want certain things, and then we get it and realize, what was all the hype for? This is not even what I wanted. And so what I started to realize is that we are really able to create the things that we want if we believe and if we don't talk ourselves out of it. Because I love what Mel Robbins, anybody heard from Mel Robbins? She has a book called The 5-Second Rule. And what she says is that oftentimes we talk ourselves out of doing the very thing that we need to do to move our lives forward. And so to disrupt that, to stop that, she suggests you count from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just do it, because it doesn't give us an opportunity to talk ourselves out of it. You know how we plan to, okay, I'm going to study tonight. And we talk ourselves out of study. I'm going to do it tomorrow, and I'm going to do it till next day. And what she says is that if you apply the 5-second rule and just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just go to it, then you're already in motion. But too often we keep pushing it off, and procrastinating and never getting there. And what happens when we procrastinate? We start beating ourselves up. And particularly when that test comes around, or particularly when that paper is due, we're like, I should have done this, and I always do this, and well, that's another thing we have to do. We have to change our language. Stop saying things that we always do. You used to do that, but today's a new day. I'm doing better. I'm going to prepare differently. I'm going to study sooner, faster. I'm not going to wait to the last minute, because if we keep telling our same story, we'll keep having the same experiences. Because I know I went 6 years through undergrad, John. 4 years, but I was there 6 years. And I kept doing this. I would always wait to the last minute to study and do an all-nighter, trying to finish a paper or a test. I would always do that because that was the story I kept telling myself. So I always lived up to that story. But we have to disrupt that story to tell something that's more empowering, that's going to lead us forward. And so for many of us, we have these dreams, we have these visions of the things that we want to accomplish, and they'll only will happen if we shift our mindset, if we start expecting differently, and if we start realizing that we are enough. Anybody have a $5 bill? $5 bill? I promise I'm going to give it back to you. Give me a $1 bill, okay. I'm going to need you to hold this mic for me. So here's a $1 bill. So what happens if I borrow this $1 bill? Is it still worth $1? Is it still $1? What happens if I step on it? Has the value changed? The value hasn't changed. And so we're just like this dollar bill. Your value doesn't change because of the abuse you may have gone through, maybe who's left you, maybe who has disregarded you. It's still worth $1. It's the value doesn't change. Your value doesn't change based upon what you've gone through. Sometimes we think that we are somehow less valuable because we've gone through some tragic, painful experiences. No, your value doesn't change. Your value doesn't change. Now, the challenge for many of us, it changes if you think it changes, because you control your value. See, we are all thermostats in our lives. See, a thermostat sets the temperature. A thermometer measures it. We have to be thermostats in our lives. We have to be thermostats in our life. We determine what's of value. We determine what's good, what's bad. So we've allowed our situations to dictate how we feel about ourselves. Just because you grew up. See, I could have very well said in that story that, I grew up in the hood. My dad was I don't use that word, drug dealer. He was a pharmaceutical salesperson. I could have sat in that story and allowed that story to define me, to make me feel like I wasn't enough to run a multi-million-dollar business. I could have allowed that. But I chose to redefine that experience because what I know is that we have to begin to stand on our story and not in our story. Does that make sense? Stand on the story, not in our story. When we stand in our story, we let the story dictate how we are going to live our lives. So because somebody told me I wasn't enough, I'm just going to stand in that and be that. But if I stand on top of the story, I use that experience to encourage, to embolden, and to inspire other people, because now other people can see what I survived and that I'm just like you. You know, we've had similar experiences. And what happens is you're able to encourage other folks with your life, with the things that you've gone through. And so one of the things that I think is so important, and why we started this You Are Enough empowerment movement, because so many people are dealing with so many different things where they are made to feel like they're not enough because of their religion, because of their sexuality, because of their ethnicity, because of what happened to them. Many people feel like, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And we're constantly hearing that. And if you hear that enough, you'll start to believe. You'll start to believe it, because faith comes by hearing and hearing and hearing. And so to counter all of the negative stuff that we're hearing and seeing in the society, you have to learn how to affirm yourself and tell yourself, no matter what, I am enough. How many of you know that you're enough? Okay. So that's not even half the room. So look, we're going to do a little exercise. So when I say I am, I need you to say enough. Y'all with me? I am enough. Oh, no, there is no feeling in that whatsoever. Let's try that one more time. I am enough. I am enough. I am. And so anytime you're going through a difficult time, a difficult experience, you are to say what? I am enough. I am enough. And so that is to be your mantra. That is to be the thing that you remind yourself when you get that grade that you didn't like, or when you forget to turn in that paper, or when the grades come out and your grades aren't satisfactory. You have to remind yourself, I am enough, because when you tell yourself that, that gives you hope. That reminds you that you can get back up. That reminds you that you're not out of the game. You may have had a temporary setback, but you're still in there. You're still in there. And as you continue to tell yourself, I am enough, you'll get stronger and stronger, and you'll get to where you want to be. You'll get on the side of that. And so, and even if life gets real difficult, you see, for me, I thought the financial thing was a big deal. But then 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so that took me to a whole nother space of doubt and fear. Because what happens, the moment somebody tells you you have cancer, I automatically think of death. I don't know about you, but I automatically thought death. And so I had to remind myself, I'm enough to deal with this. I'm enough to get through this. And so guess what? I'm still here 3 years later, and I don't have cancer anymore because I believed. And what happens? Not only did I believe, your belief should change your actions. If you're saying you believe and you've not changed something, then that's not really belief. That's some kind of, a fantasy land. But your belief should shift your action. So what did I do when I had that cancer diagnosis? I realized I needed to change what I was eating, what I was putting in my body. I needed to change some things about my lifestyle. And I also realized that carrying around a lot of stress weakens our immune system and makes us susceptible to a lot of diseases. And so I had to begin to reduce my stress level by reminding myself that I'm enough and that everything that you go through, trust me, it'll pass. I know when you're in the midst of it, you think, oh my God, life is over. I'll never be able to make it through this. But guess what? This will pass too. Here's what I know about all of us, is that you've never not made it. You've never not made it. There have been some things you've gone through where you thought was going to take you out. You're like, oh, if they find out this or if this happens, I'm not going to make it. But guess what? You're still here. So you've never not made it. And so that should give you the courage and the confidence to keep on moving, to keep on trucking, no matter what. No matter what. And here's what I also know about you, and I don't even know you personally. I know that your best is yet to come. Like, you may have experienced some success, but your very best is yet to come. Why? Because as you get better, you'll start experiencing better. And so the very best for you is yet to come, as long as you never give up. Never give up, no matter what it looks like. See, I could have easily given up when I had to file bankruptcy and my car got repossessed. I could have easily given up, but I wouldn't have seen the end of the story. See, here's the thing I know about stories. I write books too, even though I don't write well. I still don't know too much about commas. But here's what I know about life, is that we get to write the chapters of the books of our lives. So you may have started out, the chapters may have started out real bad. May have been abuse, maybe abandonment. But guess what? You get to rewrite your story in a way that's empowering, that's bold, that is significant, that allows you to not only be of service to you and your family, but to the world. See, people are watching us, and they're looking to see how we manage and deal with negative situations, because if they see you get over and overcome, that gives them the confidence to let them know that it's possible. Because one of the things that happened when I was going through cancer, I never stopped being me. I never let cancer define me. I didn't, I would have my moments, because when I had cancer, the pain was so difficult. I would go into the bathroom sometime and just scream because the pain was excruciating. But I would leave the bathroom and I would just show up, with a smile on my face, even through the pain, because in my mind, I knew that the pain wasn't going to last always. And so that's really the message for all of us. Whatever pain you might be experiencing, because we all will. We all will go through dips in life. We'll all have those dips. That's what makes us a part of the human family. I don't care how much makeup you put on and how you glamorize it. We all will go through dips. And see, here's the thing that I found to be a thief of our joy. It's comparison. Comparing ourselves to others. So often we are looking at other people thinking that they have these perfect lives. Baby, everybody's going through something. I don't care what kind of filter you put on it. I don't care how it looks on Instagram, Facebook. I don't care. Look, here's the thing. Just because you don't have a glam squad to make we're judging ourselves up against folks that have glam squads and filters and all this other stuff, and whose lives are not what they appear. And so what I learned to do is not look at other folks to figure out how I feel about myself. You see folks get these pseudo boyfriends and girlfriends for Valentine's Day. They're not even a couple, but they're posting pictures and you think, oh, I'm lonely, I don't have anybody. Stop comparing yourselves to what you think other people have, because that will rob you of your joy and rob you of your destiny. And I want to say this before I end. See, our dreams are there. Our dreams are the picture that God, your creator, gives you to show you where you're going. So you're here, your dreams are there. And so the dream is to keep you focused. The dream is to keep you motivated. The dream is to keep you encouraged. Sometimes, too often, we get caught up in what's right in front of us rather than focusing on our dream and our destiny. See, when we focus on our dream and our destiny, we look up, we don't get caught up in all of the little pettiness that's going on around us, because this is where we're going. And so use your dream and vision to propel you forward. Don't get so caught up in what other people are doing, what other people have achieved, what you didn't achieve. Focus on your dreams so that you can move forward strongly and boldly toward your dreams. That's what I've learned how to do. And here's the thing that I learned not to do, is not to tell folks about your dreams and visions all the time, to focus on them, because guess what? Some people don't have dreams and visions for themselves. And if they don't have dreams and visions for themselves, they're not going to get excited when you tell them, oh, I'm going to start a juice shop, or I'm going to become a dancer. They're not going to get excited because they don't have those dreams and visions for themselves. So stop telling your dreams to people who don't have dreams for themselves, because what will happen is they will become a distraction to you. And so I want to encourage you to always stay focused on your dreams, not your mama's dreams, not your uncle's dreams for you, your dreams. Because that's another thing we get caught up in, is that sometimes our parents and family, they have dreams for us that don't line up with our dreams for ourselves. And so we get distracted and discouraged because we're doing it not because we want to, but because we're trying to please someone else. My uncle had me thinking for years I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, because he had read somewhere that mechanical engineers made a whole bunch of money. So when I got to college, that's all I knew. Oh, I want to be a mechanical engineer. Fortunately, they didn't have a mechanical engineering program at Cal State Hayward, so I didn't go that route. But he had me convinced that's what I wanted to become. And so I know in order for us to live the life that we deserve, to live in our greatness, to live in our strength, only comes when we are living in our truth, when we are pursuing those dreams that line up with who we really are. Not trying to make somebody else happy, trying to make you happy, because you can have all the trappings of success, but if it's not who you are and it's not in alignment with your dream and vision for your life, you will have things but still feel empty on the inside. And so I just hope that something was said today to remind you, to encourage you that you are worthy, that you are valuable just as you are. Your value is not an if-when proposition. It's not if I get the job, or when I get married, or if this person likes me, or when this happened, then I'll start feeling good about myself. You're to feel good about yourself just as you are. Just as you are, right now, where you stand, where you sit, you are enough. There's nothing you need to do. There's nothing you need to change. You are enough just as you are. And so I just want to encourage you. And guess what? Remember, when life gets tough, you're to say, I am.
Enough.
Y'all going to take it up just a little bit louder. I am.
Enough.
I am enough. And that's what I want you to remember when life gets tough. I am enough. And you don't have to tell it to everyone. You don't have to shout it like we shouted it today. But just remind yourself in those quiet moments, in those moments where you feel most vulnerable, that I'm enough. I'll get through this. I'll get back up. I'll get back up. All right. So I just want to thank you for allowing me. And don't forget to rock your bracelets, rock your wristbands, and that will be your reminder that I am enough, to remind yourself that I am enough. Are there any questions? No questions?
Facebook, if you have questions, please feel free to post them. And anyone else in this room.
Somebody has a...
Of course.
Oh, you want to use that. Be all official.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess my question would be, I work in a second grade classroom right here in Biddeford, and something that we really struggle with, like with my students, is that like you are enough. So as many like positive affirmations that we give them, sometimes we don't see the results quite as we want because they're not believing in themselves. So how is that something that we can teach even like that younger population of kiddos?
Give them exercises to do, like little homework that they can do when just writing it down as a way to remind them. Because again, faith comes by hearing, and so it has to be repeated over and over again. It doesn't happen by just saying it once or twice. It's something that they have to be exposed to repeatedly, especially if they're not getting that kind of support at home. Yeah. But that's awesome that you're doing that.
Harold, can you go back to what you were saying about the 5 seconds and go part?
Yeah. So what happens for so many of us is that we quickly talk ourselves out of doing what we know we need to do. So even if it's something like paying a bill or making a phone call or trying to set up an interview or trying to call a prospective client, we'll talk ourselves out of it. But with the 5-second rule, when you say, okay, I'm going to give myself 5 seconds, and then I'm just going to do it, what you're doing is you're disrupting that opportunity for that negative self-talk to creep in. So you're moving into action before that negative self-talk can start, because so often we do that. So you say, okay, I've been pushing this off. I've been procrastinating. I know I want to work for this particular company. I know I need to call them. Give myself 5 seconds, okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And before you can think about it, you just pick up the phone and you go into action. You go into action. And what happens is, for all of us, how we mitigate fear is through action, by taking action. You don't mitigate fear by just sitting there trying to think yourself out of it. It's by taking action is how we begin to mitigate and diminish the hold that fear often has on us.
Thank you.
That's it? I guess y'all already know you're enough. No other questions? Oh, you gotta be official.
What's with this entire like company you talk about, like your company? Mm-hmm. Like, you wanna elaborate?
Yeah. So here's how this all happened. Because I believe we teach what we need to learn. Because I never felt like I was enough because of my humble beginnings and my dad's choice of careers. I never felt like I was enough. And so I was inspired to create this movement to remind others, because what I realized is, as I started talking about it, I realized that most people have periods in their lives where they don't feel like they're enough. And so we created this movement to take the veil off, because so often we are wearing masks and people think that we feel good about ourselves and they think our self-esteem is high because we have on a pretty mask. But beneath the mask are all these fears and insecurities. And so we started the movement as a way to take off the veil and begin to really address what's at the core of why so many people don't feel like they are enough. And a lot of it has to do with programming. A lot of it has to do with the environment some of us grew up in. A lot of us grew up in environments that weren't healthy, where we didn't see a lot of positive role models of success, or we were in environments where it all looked good on the outside. We had the two-story home with the white picket fence, but behind there was a lot of unhealthy things happening. And so the movement is really about taking the veil off and really speaking truth to those fears, because when you begin to speak truth to fears, then you begin to question, what was I fearing? What was I afraid of? What was I afraid of?
Harold, do you still have your staffing company?
No, I sold that. I sold that 9 years ago.
I have some questions from Facebook. First of all, Melissa Nunez thinks you're an awesome motivational speaker.
Oh, thank you.
Jocelyn Eagle asked, where can we find you on social media?
So I'm on social. Now, I'm old, y'all, so let me think. So on Instagram, I'm Instagram at Harold LaFall, and then Facebook, Harold LaFall. It's all Harold LaFall. It's all my name. It's all my name, yeah.
Last question so far is, how do you feel confident or respond when someone ridicules you for not being successful in their eyes or based on their standards?
That's
From
a good question.
Classic cliche.
Classic cliche.
Yes.
That is a good question, because inevitably we will all experience that. And again, one of the things that we have to remember, people are coming from their perspective, and oftentimes people are attempting to project their stuff onto us. And so one of the things that I've learned to do is, when people are coming at you with negativity or trying to tell you that you're not this or you're not that, what I've come to discover is that what other people think about me is really not my business. It's not my business. You only give it power if you accept it. And so when individuals have that kind of perspective, if you're not able to separate yourself from them, because maybe it's a parent that feels that way, you let them have their peace, but you determine what is of value. So you can reject what they're saying. So we all have the ability to listen without listening, right? So you hear somebody talking, you're listening, but you're really not listening. So in some instances where it's a person that, maybe a family that you can't separate yourself from, you have to learn how to listen without listening, and realize that many times people are coming from a place of their own pain. They are just repeating a pattern that maybe their parent had that same perspective on them, and so they're just projecting that. You had a question.
That was my question, was like how to deal with the negativity.
Yeah. And just realizing that negativity comes from individuals that feel insecure about themselves. Because guess what? People who really feel good about themselves and are doing things, they are not being negative. They're not being haters. They're not being negative. But you just have to remember the source of the negativity, and just look at their lives, and move forward from there. And let me just say that that's not easy all the time. I don't want to simplify and make it seem like that's something easy, because we as human beings have the ability of just rehashing things over and over again. What did they really mean? And why did they say that? We get caught up in those cycles of keeping something alive when we can just very easily at the same time kill it. And the way you kill things like that is that you have to distract yourself. Distract yourself with something positive. To sometimes we distract ourselves with things that are not healthy, drinking and doing those kinds of things. But you distract those things by doing something positive. Like one of the things that I do is when I'm like all up in my head, you ever just been all up in your head and all these, I go work out and I put on some inspirational music. Or my favorite right now is, and I would embarrass my son if I admitted this, but my favorite right now, the song that really gets me going on the treadmill is, what's her name? Demi Lovato? Sorry, not sorry. Yeah. Baby, I'm sorry, not sorry. Oh, I could go on the treadmill all day. I just keep hitting replay. But that helps to distract me when things are going crazy in my head. And here's the thing. Sometimes folks are dropping negative something on you. They've moved on with their lives, and you still are rehearsing over and over their comment. They done went on, they done moved on with their lives, and you're still in your head with it. Gotta learn how to just let it go. But learn how to let it go is a process, and you have to be intentional about it. Like, okay, let me just do something to distract myself from those negative thoughts. Yes, you gotta be official. I feel like we're in Congress. You know how they're in Congress, they get those little microphones.
So like after like all of those things happened, like with the car and the house, how did you, like, was there any like one thing that made you like keep going to like realize that you were enough?
That's a good question. I realized that as much as I wanted to give up, I felt like I couldn't give up without realizing my dream. And so even though for a while there, I had my pity party, I didn't want to talk to anyone, I stayed in the house and I just didn't want to be seen, I came back to myself because I remembered that when I looked at the history of other successful people, everybody has had failures. Everybody has gone through stuff. I mean, what's the guy who created Tesla? Elon Musk. Yeah, so he made all this money, his first business venture. Then after that venture, he started another one, and it wasn't quite successful. And it got to the point where he had to ask his ex-wife for money for rent. But now look where he's at now. And so what I realized during that experience is that failure is not final. It feels like it. Trust me, I know it feels like it's, when you're in the midst of it, it feels like things are not going to get better. But that's when you have to do your work. And your work is to encourage yourself in spite of your situation, to remind yourself that you are enough, that if other people have fallen and gotten back up, guess what? You can do it too. You can do it too. Crickets, we got crickets up in here, up in here. That's it. So do you feel more encouraged? Do you feel like you have something that you can use next time life knocks you down? Because trust and believe, a knockdown is probably right around the corner. So, and so when it happens, you have to remind, don't get so overwhelmed, don't want to throw in the towel, don't be talking crazy like I was talking crazy, talking about I want to kill myself just because I lost my house, look, anything material you can get back again. You can get it again. And so killing yourself is final. So we don't do that, but we have to remind ourselves, but because we're human, we have those little thoughts, because and all it is that it's not even the failure. What we're concerned about is what other people will think. That's really what it boils down to. We give so much credence and so much power to what other people think, and we give our power away. See, your power is within you, because you get to dictate and decide what matters and what doesn't matter. You get to decide it. Doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. Everybody else can think you're crazy. In fact, if you are a dream chaser, everybody is going to think you're crazy. Everybody is going to think you're crazy. When I started my business, you best believe everybody thought I was crazy. Look, your mama was on welfare, your daddy was a drug pharmaceutical salesperson, and you're going to start a multi-million-dollar business. Oh, that sounds crazy. That sounds absolutely crazy. Oh, you're going to write a book. Oh, not just one book. You're going to write 3 books, and you barely pass English, and you don't really know where commas go. That sounds crazy. So trust and believe that your dreams are going to sound crazy to everybody else. But as long as it makes sense and feels good to you, that's all that matters. Because if it makes sense and it feels good to you, and when I say it feels good to you, where it feels like, okay, this is going to happen. See, it's one thing to think a dream, but it's another thing to feel it. When you feel it, that is what attracts the dream and makes it real. That's what makes it real. Yes, you got to be official.
Get myself in the face with it. What are your book, like you said you have 3 books, so like are they all like motivational books or like?
So here's the funny thing. So my first book that I wrote is called Brother CEO. It's a business success guide for African American men. And the reason I wrote that book is I was in this magazine called Essence, and no, Black Enterprise. I was in this magazine called Black Enterprise, and when the article came out on me and my company, I started getting all these letters from people I didn't know, but the letters had numbers on them. And they were letters from people that were in prison. You know, they have their prison numbers. And so they were asking, well, how did you do it? How did you build this business? And they wanted to know, you know, the steps that I took. And so I wrote that first book for the guys that were in prison. So that was my first book. The second book is called Living from Within, Getting to the Heart of True Happiness, Self-Acceptance, and Peace. And I wrote that book because my mom passed, and I was having such a difficult time dealing with her passing, because I'm a mama's boy. Everything I did was to make my mama happy. And so when she was gone, I didn't know if I could be happy again. I didn't know if I could find peace again. So I wrote that book based upon that experience. And then the latest book is called I Am Enough, and just really sharing strategies. And I write what I need to learn better. And so no one has any of this figured out. I don't care if you're on TV. I don't care who you are. We are all human beings, and we're all susceptible to the same feelings and the same emotions. So the feelings that you have sometimes where you may not feel adequate, where you may not feel smart, that is a part of the human condition. So don't beat yourself up. I wish I knew this when I was your age, but I didn't. And so I suffered and struggled a long time because I suffered so much I used to have panic attacks when I was your age because I was under so much stress, all in my head, all in my head.
Harold, I have a couple more questions on Facebook. Bless her heart. Classic Cliche has another great question. She asks, I assume it's a she, so it is okay to not respond to someone's projections, even if it makes you feel like you're backing down.
Oh, that is so good. See, the moment you feel like you have to defend yourself, the battle is already lost. You don't have to defend yourself or your worth or your position to anyone. The moment you think that you have to, the battle is already lost. The battle is already lost. So no, don't defend your position, your why, the reason why you dream or believe the way you do. Because the moment you do that, the battle is already all over. You've already lost.
Thank you.
I guess that food is settling in. So no other questions? Well, I have enjoyed being with you all this evening. Again, I hope that when life hits you, and we know that it will, because it will hit us all, that you are reminded in those moments the truth, and the truth is this, that you are enough just as you are. You have nothing to prove, nothing to demonstrate to anyone else. You are enough just as you are. Just as you are. So don't change your hair color, not unless you want to. Don't get yourself a little wig. Just if you want to, but not to try to impress someone else, because their opinion of you is none of your business. All right? And so there's a quote by James Baldwin that I love. And James Baldwin tells us, he says, your crown has already been bought and paid for. All you have to do is put it on. So I want to challenge you to rock your crown. Rock your crown. Rock your crown. You don't have to prove anything to anyone else. You're enough just as you are. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. I wanted to give just a small token. It's chilly in Maine, so we got you something to keep you a little bit warm, even though I know you have your lovely I Am Enough apparel, which he will be selling afterwards. There you are.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you all will help me in thanking Mr. LaFall again for coming all the way to Maine, chilly Maine
California.
in February. Thank you.